keep waiting. We would now like to invite passengers traveling on Cathay Pacific Airways flight 6873 to road to Hong Kong.
I was hired to photograph the children at the orphanage in Pattaya, Thailand. Along with most other people, I had never heard of Pattaya. I had less than a week to get enough shots to later publish a book on the kids and their lives at the orphanage. I knew there was a school there for the blind, a school for the deaf, and other facets of service organizations associated with the orphanage, including some vague references I had heard regarding a safe house for street kids. The children that resided there were trying to escape all manner of abuses, from the prolific sex trade and child prostitution, being put out on the street to sell drugs by parents. The particulars of exploitation and abuse go on and on. My time at the orphanage was a whirlwind experience, and I loved every minute with the kids. It was there that I met Ashley Sims and Pam Proto, who were volunteering their time at the orphanage to play with the kids. On my last day in Thailand, I was taken to the Safe House for Street Kids. The Child Protection and Development Center, or CPDC, was a fledgling effort in desperate need of some help, resources, and most of all, attention. I had been searching for a long time, or waiting for something to come to me that would allow me to use photography to tell someone's story, someone that otherwise would go completely unnoticed. Their stories would never be told, and their stories would never be heard. No one would ever know them. And while I still have some projects that I work with that are very fulfilling and that are very dear to me, I knew within 5 minutes at the CPDC, when I first visited there, that this was it. And it attracted me, and I was absolutely transfixed by the calling that appeared before me.
You know, I remember a lot about that very first day that I was brought out to the CPDC and introduced to all the children at the village for the first time. I remember seeing the conditions in which they were sleeping and eating and doing their homework and doing dishes and taking their showers. And I remember it being hard. I remember it being really hard. But one of the things that I remember even more than that was my very broken Thai at the time, and the smiles of the children, laughing, I'm sure, at my attempts. But the unconditional love that came with those smiles, it was unbelievable. It was a moment that I remember thinking, my life has changed. These children have changed and will change my life. And I want to be a part of changing theirs.
The CPDC was at that time on land they didn't even own, with no permanence afforded to them whatsoever. The buildings were small and very rudimentary, but safe and for the most part clean, considering even adequate sanitation is a luxury in many poor parts of Thailand. The dining sala was already too small for the 20 or so kids they had in residence there. Luckily, the CPDC was to move soon to a permanent home where better accommodations could be built. But the dining sala was not a structure they had the resources to give much attention to at the time.
The conditions that were there, that the kids were living in, needed to be improved upon. And they were. Plans were in the making. Other organizations had begun to step up, and new houses were being built. A soccer field was planned. And that's all well and great, because the most important thing, I think, for these children was to have a safe place to put their heads at night, because that's not something they had up until this point in their life, really ever.
While immediate needs of safety and shelter were met for the kids, the dining sala was really an afterthought, at the mercy of sparse resources and space.
But if you can imagine just a basic structure, a tin roof, wood slat sides, with some old tables, a couple old donated refrigerators, and 2 propane burners, and a couple fluorescent lights hanging. I mean, that serves, even to this day, as the place where the meals are taken.
No running water, dirt floors, no safe storage for cooking equipment, no clean food preparation areas. In many cases, the food had to be cleaned and prepared in the same areas where dishes were washed, food was disposed of. Also in the same areas where the laundry was done and where the kids had to bathe. It was the only place where they had access to water.
After every meal, whoever's in charge of dishes that day kind of piles all the dishes and cups and forks and spoons into baskets, and they cart them out back, where they stand hunched over buckets of water and begin to clean the meal's dishes.
And then the rainy season came along.